All right, guys, welcome back. We're going to get right into the stock charts. I'm going to show you guys some key things I'm looking at, and hopefully it gives you, an idea of what, some stock trade setups and where the market's heading. So I'm going to get right into it, and I'm not going to be around this morning, so I wanted to get the video out as of right now and just kind of show you what I'm seeing. We're going to start off here with Redfin. Now this is one that I pointed out. I had it charted. You could see I had some alerts set for it, and basically this was the trend line that I could find was kind of the nearest level of support right here, and so I was looking for a break of that, and then that would basically be your sell signal. So it broke right here, and it did a series of back tests, just really muted, a really muted back test, and then it broke. Now, the reason why I like this one really from the beginning was clear negative divergence on the daily and the hourly, but look here on the daily, big negative divergence right there on the daily. So you can see price kept making new highs, and yet the momentum kept fading. So then you look for price to break support, and that was the break right here. So I figured, okay, we'd break. Did a little bit of back testing, but for the most part, was not able to really recover much of that support, and then it's completely rolled over now. So from that breakdown point, we'll just measure it from the breakdown point to where it's at here. That's a 7% drop. Where's this thing going? Well, going to the daily, not the weekly, the daily. Looks like it's going to come back down to this more major support down here at 47, depending on when it actually gets there. And we'll see. A break of that sets this thing up for, I would think, a move down to this 31.43 target, right about there. So that's probably, that's kind of the trade idea. It's already broke the first level of support that I was watching for, and then, if it breaks the second line, then we'll probably get a drop of about 30%. So that would be the short trade. I wouldn't expect it to drop too much more. It was very similar to DraftKings, and that's why I kept pointing it out. Redfin looked very similar to it. And DraftKings, I think DraftKings has pretty much played out. There might be some more downside, but for now, it seems like it's played out from high to the lows, down 30, about 31%. I did catch a little more of that yesterday as it sold off, and I think I'm done with this one for now. I mean, it could go lower. If you're still in it, you could just keep lowering your stops and write it down. Tesla just continues to grind around. You can see pretty weak price action the last few days. It's really just been moving higher, moving slightly lower, in general, it's been moving higher, but it's just a really muted price action. These candles are really small. The bodies are really small. There's just no real momentum. And so I think we're going to, roll over. I think, again, I'm looking for these gaps to fill on Tesla. So my target for the short term, once we start getting some downside momentum, is down to this 224.86. And from where we're at now, that's a drop of about 50%. So that's kind of what I'm looking for on a move for Tesla. Okay, run. I pointed this one out. I've been watching this one for a little bit now. Negative divergence was in the daily. So as we were moving higher here, we really had started to have negative divergence. Really right back here, we started to get the negative divergence. And it just kept building and building. And so what I thought was, on the hourly, you also had slight negative divergence on the hourly right there. You can see it, and there's your negative divergence right there. We made just a slight new high right there, and then it rolled over. So basically, I was looking, and I had the slight trend line right here, and I was saying, okay, if we break this trend line, then that will probably set it in motion to the downside, and that is pretty much what played out. Now, what I'm looking for is this to come back down to this major support line. This is what I had talked about in a couple videos back, where if we broke from way up here, then it was probably going to come back down and tag this support line. And once we get there, then you're going to look for a break of that support line. Now, if that breaks, you'll have negative divergence in play, and it really was in play on the daily chart up right here. Well, sorry, it wasn't play back here, but very prominent right here with this peak. It definitely wasn't play right here because you made a new higher high and momentum made a new lower low right there than the previous peak in momentum. But it just extended. So all this price action right here is just negative, is just diverging with momentum, extending out. So now you get a break of the major trend line. That sets this thing in motion. Where's it going? Well, I see this gap right down here, which is kind of this peak area. I would say just right about there. You've got a level at 23.92, and then you have a gap right below it. So we'll just call that a support zone. If you happen to catch, if this breaks, I would just target the top of the gap because it's the support zone is, the bottom of the gap's pretty close, but depending on when we break, it could be a drop of about 50%. And this thing's, had a huge run, so a 50% drop is not out of control. I mean, from March, it's been up 850%. So to have a 50% drop is really not that crazy. So I'll watch for that. I want to point this one out. I like this one. This is a good setup. Here's what I like about it. Daily, big negative divergence. It's just been building. We really started to get negative divergence right here. Back in early August, that's when the negative divergence really showed up. And then every single price act, every single high since that time has been a diverging high. So if you go to the hourly here, you can see just a slight, resistance line right here on the hourly that we broke. We just broke the other day. And so we're just, kind of consolidating, just chopping around right here. We haven't fully, we haven't had that impulsive breakdown yet, but again, we're not really moving up either. So we'll wait and watch to see what's happening, but I do like this. I think this moves to the downside. Let me find some targets. Targets on this one is really, I think probably this peak right here. You can see you've got a little bit of a level somewhere right in there around 170.88. And then if you go to the daily here, you can probably spot some more clear targets. Right there's a target. You can see 134.65. So we'll leave those up. Again, I never wait exactly for the target. I always step in early. If I'm going to take profit, I always want to step in a little bit early. What's the Nasdaq doing? Nasdaq to me looks like it wants to move a little bit higher. And, we're kind of stuck in this range. If I zoom in here, you can see here this range that we're in. Resistance right now, I see at 293. It's about 293.20. And then support is right there at about 286. And we're just kind of sandwiched between that range. So a pop above the 293 and then really a pop above the highs sets triple Q's up for a back test, a full back test of this broken trend line, this green trend line right here. You can see this green trend line that we've been walking up all year in 2020. So a break above the highs really gets you to a back test, I believe, up around that 307, 308. It'll make a new high and probably put in a negative divergence if it does that. And then a break really above, or a break down below the lows of 286 is actually is going to set this up to the downside. Those are the levels that I have on that one. One of the longs that I'm in, Philip Morris, looks like it's just continuing to bull flag. I'm expecting a breakout soon, but you can see here's your flagpole there. There's your flag, and we get the major target of basically up here somewhere. So I've got the high right here at 82.55 as kind of the near-term target. I expect we'll get a reaction there. And then if we break above that, we're going up to roughly 90 bucks. So that is still looking good. Everything is playing out. You can see here on the hourly, we're just kind of starting to break out at the top of the flag, but it hasn't been impulsive yet. Usually the breakout of this would be an impulsive breakout higher. So I'm looking for that. And I'm going to wrap up with Peloton. I just got an alert on that one, so I took a look. We haven't broken, but I'm watching it. So trend line right here on Peloton. On the hourly chart, we've just been walking up the trend. And you need to see that trend go. When that trend breaks, you should have a pretty impulsive sell-off down to a more major trend line, which is, if I look at the daily here, is down here. And so if we break that first hourly trend line, that should get us down to 109, 110, 108, depending on when we get there, of course, or when we break. But that is kind of the move I see playing out, and for 20% gain or so. Now this one we don't necessarily have. There's not really. There is negative divergence. It's just not that steep. So the reason why this is negative divergence is you made an equal high. The high right here in the momentum is equal, and yet the price was well above the previous price. So it's not as good as having momentum really starting to fade like that, when you have it really starting to downtrend. So that's something to take this one with a grain of salt, basically. And that might, maybe we're not ready to break yet. Maybe this wants to go a little higher and then set up with a better divergence. You can see if we break down, this is the daily. If we go a little bit higher and maybe momentum starts to fade, and we break down, then we could potentially set it up a negative divergence on the daily. What I see maybe playing out is we go a little bit higher here, then we break this minor trend line, we come down and tag the major trend line, and then bounce off of it and come up and make a new high, and then you'll have putting in a negative divergence. That's all hypothetical. Obviously, nothing's played out yet, but I am watching it. This is a high flyer, so looking for this minor trend line to break on the hourly chart. If that breaks, I'm looking for it to come down to the more major trend line. And that's all I got, guys. I'm going to wrap it up here. I really don't see a whole lot else. I've been scanning, looking for ideas and setups. Haven't seen anything yet. That's crazy. I'm not really short the market right now. The indexes, I just don't see anything setting up quite yet. So we just have to wait, and setups will show. They'll show up with some more time. So thank you, guys. Catch you on the next one.